Most of us think of plumbing problems as just random. A sudden leak, a clog that shows up out of nowhere. But what if I told you they're not random at all? What if they're actually symptoms of a much bigger story, one that's written in the very ground your house is built on? Well, today we're going to put on our detective hats and uncover that hidden story.
So, does any of this sound familiar? You've got that one slow drain that you fix, and then, boom, 2 months later, it's back again. Or maybe you hear those weird gurgling sounds coming from the toilet late at night. And what about those mysterious soggy spots in the yard that just never, ever seem to dry out? These aren't just annoyances, you guys. They're clues. Clues that something much bigger is going on.
And here's the real kicker. The culprit often isn't just what's in your pipes, it's what's happening around them. I'm talking about the type of soil your house sits on, the year it was built, even the water that your city pipes in. All these things come together to create a totally unique risk profile, like a plumbing fingerprint for every single home.
So, to make this real, we're going to dive into a case study, a place called Sandy Springs, Georgia. Now, it doesn't matter if you've never even been to Georgia. The challenges in this one city are a perfect example of the kinds of invisible forces that could be messing with your home no matter where you live. See, in Sandy Springs, you've basically got a perfect storm. That infamous Georgia red clay, it actually expands when it's wet and shrinks when it's dry, which literally squeezes and shifts the pipes underground. Then you've got a ton of homes built in the 60s and 70s, which means they likely have their original pipes, which are now old, brittle, and just waiting to crack. Add in a high water table and some seriously hard, mineral-heavy water, and you've got a system that is under constant invisible stress.
And that's where your home's age really comes into play. Old materials like galvanized steel were super common for decades, but they have this one fatal flaw. They rust from the inside out. That's a big reason you might see low pressure or rusty-looking water. And those old clay sewer lines, they get brittle over time, making them prime targets for cracking from shifting soil or, invading tree roots. It's a world away from modern materials like PAX, copper, and PVC, which are all engineered to fight back against these exact problems.
Okay, so we've got the big picture, the soil, the pipes, the water. But how does all that stuff actually turn into the everyday headaches that drive you and me completely nuts? Let's connect the dots.
So you see that recurring sewer backup on the chart? That's not just bad luck. It's very likely caused by tree roots sneaking into old clay pipes that have already been weakened by that shifting soil. And that weak, frustrating water pressure? That's probably decades of rust literally closing up the inside of your old galvanized pipes. Oh, and the weird rumbling from your water heater? That's no ghost, I promise. It's mineral scale from hard water literally cooking onto the heating element. Every single symptom points right back to one of these hidden causes.
All right, so knowing the why is half the battle. But what do the pros do about it? Well, they don't just show up and patch a leak. They have a playbook, a strategy for dealing with the entire system.
A real professional's approach breaks down into 3 clear steps. First, of course, they stop the bleeding. That's the emergency repair. But they don't stop there. Step 2 is where the real solution lies. System installation, upgrading the old failing components to fix the problem for good. And the third, and honestly the smartest step, that's preventative maintenance. It's all about catching the small issues before they turn into a full-blown 3 a.m. catastrophe.
And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? Anyone who's had to deal with a burst pipe in the middle of the night knows this feeling. An emergency repair always happens on the problem schedule, at the worst possible time. But you know what? Proactive maintenance, that happens on your schedule, and it can save you an incredible amount of money and stress in the long run.
Okay, so now let's talk about empowering you. How can you tell if the person you've hired is a real professional who actually gets all this deep-seated stuff, or if they're just a handyman with a wrench? Well, there are some really clear signs.
For example, a true pro will talk to you about something called backflow prevention. Now, I know it sounds like technical jargon, but it's an absolutely critical safety device that's required by code. It's what stops contaminated water from getting back into the clean public water supply. If your plumber is checking these, it's a huge sign they care about safety and doing things by the book.
Seriously, think of this as your must-have checklist. A real pro gives you a price right up front. No nasty surprises later. They're licensed, and they know the local codes inside and out, like when you need a permit just to install a water heater in Fulton County. They use cool diagnostic tools like a sewer camera to actually show you the tree roots in your pipe instead of just telling you they're there. And finally, they stand behind their work with a real, written warranty.
And here is a number every single homeowner should know: 40 to 80 psi. That is the safe zone for your home's water pressure. If it gets above 80 psi, it can seriously damage your pipes, your faucets, your appliances, everything. A true pro will check this because they know that just fixing a leak without addressing dangerously high pressure is just putting a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem.
Okay, so we've dug deep into our case study. Now it's time to bring all these lessons right back to your front door and apply them to your own home. So I'm going to ask you straight up, what is your home's hidden story? Do you know when it was built? What kind of pipes it has? Do you live somewhere with that expansive clay soil or really hard water? Just starting to think about these questions is the first step to finally understanding why those same old problems keep popping up. So here's the bottom line. Your home's biggest plumbing threats are actually predictable. They're not some big mystery. The clues are right there, written in its age, its materials, and the very ground it was built on. And once you learn how to read that story, you can finally stop just reacting to crises and start truly protecting your home for years to come.